Children are not grateful. They don't have to be. Love is not a debt to be repaid. My grandmother used to tell me that when I was struggling with my own daddy issues, sitting on her porch in Memphis, watching the fireflies dance in the summer heat, I carried those words with me for 73 years, thinking I understood what they meant. But sometimes, fellas, sometimes you discover that while you were busy being grateful for the chance to love someone, they were busy keeping score of everything you couldn't give them. The text message came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was at the hardware store picking up supplies for a charity build I was volunteering on. 14 years of silence, and my daughter chose to break it with 8 words. Dad, I need to talk. It's about money. Not I miss you, not I'm sorry, not can we try again, just money. I stood there in aisle 7, staring at that message from Ashley, feeling like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until I stopped beating. 14 years since she blocked my number, returned my letters unopened, and told everyone who'd listened that I was a deadbeat father who'd abandoned his family. 14 years of me trying to prove that wasn't true, only to find out that the daughter I'd raised since she was in diapers saw me exactly the same way everyone else did, as a bank account with legs. The follow-up message came 30 seconds later. My wedding is in 3 months. Mom says you owe us for all the child support you never paid. I need $50,000, 0 cents. Child support I never paid. For a daughter I'd raised in my own house until she was 18. For a girl whose every meal I'd cooked, whose every scraped knee I'd bandaged, whose every school play I'd attended while her mother was out finding herself with other men. If you've ever been reduced to a $sign by someone you die for, hit subscribe and drop your city in the comments where you're watching from. Let's see where our brotherhood stretches, because I got a feeling this story is going to hit every father who's ever been told he wasn't enough. My name is Henry Bill, and I'm 73 years old now, born in 1951 in Memphis, Tennessee, to parents who believed that a man's worth was measured by how well he took care of his family. My daddy worked 2 jobs at the cotton mill and the rail yard. My mama cleaned houses for white folks on the good side of town. And they raised me to believe that love was action, not just words. Henry, my daddy used to tell me as we sat on our front steps in the evenings, a man can say he loves his family every day, but if he ain't showing up, ain't providing, ain't protecting, then those are just empty words. Love is what you do, not what you say. I took those words to heart, worked my way through high school while helping support the family, earned a scholarship to Tennessee State University, and by the time I was 25, I was working as an electrician with my own truck and a reputation for being reliable. Nothing fancy, but honest work that paid honest money. The thing about growing up poor is that you learn the value of everything. Every dollar matters, every opportunity counts, and you never take stability for granted. When I started making good money, I saved every penny I could, not because I was greedy, but because I knew how quickly everything could disappear. That's why when I moved to Atlanta in 1978 for better job opportunities, I was careful about the life I wanted to build. I was 27, established in my trade, and ready to find a woman who wanted to build something real together. A family, a legacy, a life that would mean something. That's when I met Rebecca Patterson at a church social in 1979. She was 24, working as a secretary at a law firm, with auburn hair and green eyes that sparkled when she laughed. She came from a middle-class white family in Marietta, the kind of people who had their struggles but never went to bed hungry. You're different from the other men here, she told me that first night as we sat on the church steps talking until the mosquitoes drove us inside. Different how? You listen when I talk. Most men just wait for their turn to speak. I like that about her, how she noticed details, how she seemed to value qualities that my mama had raised me to have. We courted for 8 months before I proposed, and she said yes without hesitation. Henry Bell, she said, throwing her arms around my neck. You're going to make me the happiest woman in Georgia. We married in the spring of 1980, a small ceremony at her family's church with about 60 people. Her parents were polite but distant, the kind of folks who weren't openly racist but made it clear they'd hope their daughter would choose differently. But Rebecca stood by me, and that was all that mattered. The first few years of marriage were good. We bought a little house in College Park, nothing fancy but ours. I was working steady, bringing home good money, and Rebecca seemed happy keeping house and talking about the children we wanted to have. Ashley came along in 1983, 3 years after we married. 7 pounds, 2 ounces of perfect baby girl with her mama's green eyes and a cry that could wake the dead. The moment the doctor put her in my arms, I knew I'd found my purpose in life. Look at her, Henry, Rebecca whispered from the hospital bed. She's perfect. She's going to be daddy's little girl, I said, and I meant every word. For the first few years, I thought I was living the American dream. Good job, loving wife, beautiful daughter, nice house, and a decent neighborhood. I worked hard, came home every night, and threw myself into being the best husband and father I could be. But looking back now, I could see the cracks were already forming. Rebecca was getting restless, talking about all the things she was missing out on by being married so young. The trips she wanted to take, the career she might have had, the experiences she'd never get to have. Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing, Henry, she told me one night when Ashley was about 5. Like, I'm just somebody's wife and somebody's mother, but I don't know who I am anymore. You're the woman I love, I said. You're Ashley's mama. What else do you need to be? But that was the wrong answer, and I should have known it then. Rebecca didn't want to be just somebody's wife and somebody's mother. She wanted to be Rebecca, whatever that meant. The relationship/bond, Ashley was my heart from day one. While other fathers might have been disappointed not to have a son, I couldn't imagine loving anything more than that little girl who reached for me every time I walked into a room. From the time she could walk, Ashley was my shadow. She'd follow me around the house, wanting to help with everything I was doing. When I was fixing something, she'd hand me tools. When I was cooking breakfast on weekends, she'd stand on a chair beside me, cracking eggs and making a mess. Daddy, can I help became her favorite phrase, and my answer was always yes. When Ashley turned 6, I started taking her with me on small electrical jobs on weekends. Nothing dangerous, just service calls where I was checking outlets or changing fixtures. She'd carry my flashlight, hand me screwdrivers, and ask a million questions about how everything worked. Why does the electricity go through the wires, Daddy? How come the lights turn on when you flip the switch? Where does the power come from? I answered every question, no matter how many times she asked. Teaching Ashley about the world became one of my greatest joys. She was smart, curious, always wanting to understand how things worked and why people did what they did. But it wasn't just the technical stuff. Ashley and I had a connection that went deeper than shared interests. When she was scared during thunderstorms, she'd crawl into bed with me and Rebecca, always positioning herself on my side. When she was sad about something at school, she'd curl up in my lap and tell me everything that was bothering her. "You're my best friend, Daddy," she told me one evening when she was 8 as I was tucking her into bed. "You're my best friend too, baby girl. Promise you'll never leave me?" "I promise. Daddy's always going to be here for you." That promise felt easy to make because I couldn't imagine a world where I wouldn't be there for Ashley. She was my purpose, my joy, the reason I worked so hard to build something good in this world. Rebecca saw our closeness, and I thought she was happy about it. What mother wouldn't want her daughter to have a good relationship with her father? But looking back, I think our bond made Rebecca feel even more like an outsider in her own family. "You two are like twins," she'd say sometimes, and it didn't always sound like a compliment. As Ashley got older, our relationship evolved but stayed strong. When she was in middle school and dealing with mean girls and first crushes, I was the one she came to for advice. When she wanted to join the science club but was worried about being the only girl, I encouraged her to go for it. "Baby girl, You're smarter than half those boys and twice as determined. Don't let anybody make you feel like you don't belong somewhere. She made it through middle school with confidence, partly because she knew she had a father who believed in her completely. When she started high school, she was excited about taking advanced science classes, maybe even thinking about engineering as a career. "I want to be like you, Daddy," she told me one night as I was helping her with algebra homework. "I want to build things and fix things and make people's lives better." My heart nearly burst with pride. Here was this brilliant, beautiful girl who wanted to follow in my footsteps, who saw value in the work I did, who wanted to use her mind and her hands to contribute something meaningful to the world. But that's also when things started falling apart at home. Rebecca's restlessness had been growing for years, and by the time Ashley was in high school, it had turned into something else: resentment, anger, a feeling that she'd been cheated out of the life she was supposed to have. She started going out with friends more often, staying out later, talking about all the things she'd missed by getting married so young. She'd come home from these nights out full of stories about the lives other women were living, the freedom they had, the choices they could make. "Sandra just got promoted to office manager," she'd say. "She's making more money than she ever thought possible. Jennifer is dating this lawyer who takes her to fancy restaurants every weekend. Michelle just bought her own condo. She says being single is the best thing that ever happened to her." I tried to be supportive, tried to understand that Rebecca needed her own identity outside of being a wife and mother, but I also started to worry about what this meant for our family, especially for Ashley. "Maybe you should think about going back to school," I suggested one night, "or finding a job you really care about. We've got enough money that you could take your time, find something you love." "It's not about money, Henry. It's about freedom. It's about being able to make choices without having to think about how they'll affect everyone else." That's when I knew we were in trouble, because family is about thinking about how your choices affect everyone else. That's what love is. That's what commitment means. But Rebecca was past caring about any of that. The first sign that something was seriously wrong came when Ashley was 16. Rebecca had been pulling away from both of us for months, spending more time with her friends, talking less about family plans and more about individual goals. One Saturday morning, I was making pancakes for Ashley and me when Rebecca came downstairs, dressed for a day out. "Where you headed?" I asked. "Jennifer is having a pool party, just some of the girls from work." "What time will you be back?" She paused, and something in that pause made my stomach drop. "I might stay over at Jennifer's tonight. She's going through a rough patch with her boyfriend and she could use the company." It was plausible. Rebecca had always been a good friend to people who needed support, but something felt different about this particular explanation. On a Saturday night? What about family dinner? Ashley's 16, Henry. She doesn't need both of us sitting around watching her eat spaghetti. Ashley looked up from her phone, catching the tension in the room. "It's okay, Dad. We can have our own party." But I could see the hurt in her eyes. Saturday night family dinners had been our tradition for years. One of the few times all three of us were guaranteed to be together without distractions. Rebecca left and she didn't come home until Sunday afternoon. When I asked how Jennifer was doing, she was vague and irritable. "She's fine. We talked. I helped her sort through some things. And now I'm tired. Can we just leave it at that?" The pattern continued for months. Rebecca would make plans with friends that seemed to require overnight stays, weekend trips, or long evening outings that kept her away from home more often than not. When I tried to talk to her about it, she'd get defensive. "I spent 16 years being available every single night, Henry. I think I've earned the right to have a social life." "What about Ashley? What about us?" "Ashley's practically an adult, and as for us, well, maybe if you were more interesting to be around, I'd want to spend more time at home." That hurt, but I tried to take it as constructive criticism. Maybe I had gotten boring. Maybe I was too focused on work and family responsibilities and had forgotten how to be the man Rebecca had fallen in love with. I started suggesting date nights, weekend trips, activities we could do together, but Rebecca always had excuses. Too tired, too busy, already had plans with friends. Meanwhile, Ashley was watching all of this and drawing her own conclusions. She'd become quieter around the house, spending more time in her room, less likely to seek out conversations with either of us. "You okay, baby girl?" I asked her one evening when I found her doing homework at the kitchen table instead of hanging out in the living room like she used to. "Just tired, Dad." "School going okay?" "Yeah, it's fine." But I could tell it wasn't fine. Ashley was picking up on the tension between her parents, and it was affecting her. She started doing all her homework immediately after school, as if staying busy would help her avoid thinking about what was happening in our family. The second major warning sign came during Ashley's junior year of high school. Rebecca had been talking about getting a job, finding something to give her more purpose and independence. I was supportive of the idea, thinking that maybe having her own career would help her feel more fulfilled. She found work as a receptionist at a real estate office, and at first, it seemed like exactly what she needed. She was more cheerful, more engaged, talking about the people she was meeting and the things she was learning about the business. But then she started working late, a lot, and working weekends, and going to work events that somehow never seemed to include spouses. "It's a networking thing," she'd explain. "Just people from the office getting together to talk about leads and strategies." "Sounds like the kind of thing where partners might be welcome," I said. "Henry, you don't know anything about real estate. You'd be bored out of your mind." Maybe that was true, but it felt like another way of keeping me separate from yet another part of her life. The third warning sign was how Rebecca started talking about money. We'd always had separate checking accounts for our personal expenses, but shared savings and shared financial goals. Suddenly, Rebecca was very interested in understanding exactly how our assets were divided. "If something happened to you, Henry, what would Ashley and I be entitled to?" "What do you mean, if something happened to me?" "I mean, if you got hurt on the job, or if we got divorced, or if you died. I need to understand our financial situation better." "We're not getting divorced, Rebecca." "I'm not saying we are. I'm just saying I should understand these things." But the way she asked the questions, the specific details she wanted to know, made it clear that she was thinking about scenarios where she and I were no longer together. I started paying more attention after that. Started noticing how Rebecca would get phone calls that she'd take in the other room. How she'd get text messages that would make her smile in a way I hadn't seen in months. How she'd started buying new clothes and wearing more makeup, even when she was just going to run errands. "You look nice," I told her one Saturday morning as she was getting ready to go grocery shopping. "Thank you," she said, but she didn't meet my eyes. "Seems like a lot of effort for the Kroger." "I just like to look put together, Henry. Not everyone wants to walk around in work clothes all the time." But I had been with Rebecca for 20 years. I knew the difference between wanting to look nice and getting dressed for someone specific. The final warning sign came just before Ashley's 18th birthday. Rebecca had been distant for months, and Ashley had started spending more time away from home, whether at friends' houses or staying late at school for various activities. One evening, I came home from work to find them having what looked like a serious conversation at the kitchen table. When I walked in, they both got quiet. "What's going on?" I asked. "Nothing," Rebecca said quickly. "Just talking about Ashley's college plan." "Ashley, you want to fill me in?" Ashley looked at her mother, then back at me. "We were just discussing options, Dad." But something about the way they looked at each other made me feel like I was missing something important, like there were conversations happening that I wasn't being included in. "What kind of options?" "Just different schools, different programs, nothing definite yet." I should have pushed harder, should have insisted on being part of those conversations, should have demanded to know what was really going on in my own family. Instead, I trusted that the people I loved would include me in decisions that affected all of us. I trusted that after 20 years of marriage and 18 years of being Ashley's father, I'd earned the right to be consulted about our family's future. I was wrong. The bomb dropped 3 weeks after Ashley's 18th birthday. On a Sunday morning in June 2001, I was in the kitchen making coffee when Rebecca came downstairs with a manila envelope in her hand and a look on her face that I'd never seen before. Henry, we need to talk. Okay, what's up? She set the envelope on the kitchen table. I filed for divorce. The words hit me like a physical blow. You've what? I filed for divorce. The papers are in there. You need to get a lawyer. I stared at her, trying to process what I was hearing. Rebecca, what are you talking about? We haven't even tried counseling. We haven't talked about this. I've been talking about this for years, Henry. You just haven't been listening. Talking about what? You said you were unhappy, but I thought we could work on it. I thought we could figure it out together. There's nothing to figure out. I don't want to be married anymore. I don't want this life anymore. What about Ashley? What about our family? Ashley's 18 now. She's an adult. She can make her own decisions about who she wants to have a relationship with. That's when the second bomb dropped. She's coming with me, Henry. Coming with you where? I'm moving in with someone who makes me happy. Ashley's going to live with us. The room started spinning. You seeing someone? I've been seeing someone for 8 months. His name is Brad. He's a realtor at my office, and he's asked me to move in with him. 8 months. While I was working to support our family, while I was trying to figure out how to make my wife happy, while I was being a father to our daughter, Rebecca had been building a whole other life with another man. Does Ashley know about this? Ashley knows about Brad. She likes him. She's excited about the change. I felt like I was drowning. Excited about what change? We're moving to his house in Alpharetta. It's bigger, nicer, in a better school district. Ashley will be able to finish her senior year at a really good school. She's already at a good school. She's got friends here, activities she's involved in, a life she's built. She wants to move, Henry. I didn't force her into anything. She sees how unhappy I've been, and she wants what's best for me. That's when Ashley walked into the kitchen, dressed and ready to go somewhere. She looked between her mother and me, taking in my shocked expression and Rebecca's defiant stance. Mom told you? Ashley asks. She told me she's divorcing me and that you're moving out. Is that what you want? Ashley's face was harder than I'd ever seen it. At 18, she looked older, more determined, like she'd already made up her mind about things I was just learning about. I want Mom to be happy, she said. She's been miserable here for years. Have I made you miserable too? It's not about you, Dad. It's about Mom needing a fresh start and me wanting to support her. What about our relationship? What about all the plans we've made? Our relationship doesn't have to change just because I'm not living here. But even as she said it, something in her tone suggested that our relationship was exactly what she expected to change. When is this happening? Today, Rebecca said, we're moving our stuff this afternoon. Today. They'd planned this whole thing, made all these decisions, arranged their entire new life. And I was finding out about it the same day they were leaving. You couldn't give me any warning? Couldn't let me know this was coming? I thought about telling you sooner, Rebecca said, but I knew you'd try to talk me out of it, and my mind is made up. So instead, you decided to blow up our family on a Sunday morning with no notice. I decided to take control of my own life for the first time in 20 years. I looked at Ashley, hoping to see some sign that this was as devastating for her as it was for me. Instead, I saw a young woman who'd already emotionally moved on, who was looking at me like I was an obstacle to overcome, rather than a father to love. Ashley, can we talk privately? She glanced at her mother, who nodded. Dad, I know this is hard for you, but Mom's been unhappy for a long time, and I've been watching her suffer. If moving in with Brad makes her happy, then I support that. What about making me happy? What about our family? Mom is my family. You're my father, and I love you, but my priority is taking care of her. Taking care of her, like Rebecca was the child and Ashley was the adult, like I was some external force that they needed protection from. I don't understand how we got here, I said. I thought we were happy. I thought we were building something good together. We were never happy, Dad. You just never noticed that Mom and I were pretending. Pretending for how long? For years? For her entire childhood? If you were pretending, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you give me a chance to make things better? Because it's not your job to make us happy, Dad. It's our job to make ourselves happy. The movers arrived at 2 o'clock. I watched from the living room window as strangers loaded up 18 years of my daughter's life and 21 years of my marriage. Clothes, books, furniture, pictures, all the physical evidence of the family I thought we'd been. Ashley came to say goodbye around 4 o'clock. She was polite, even affectionate, but distant in a way that broke my heart. I'll call you Dad. Bye. Soon. Once we get settled. Ashley, you know you'll always be welcome here, right? This will always be your home. I know, Dad. Thank you. But something in her tone suggested that she was already thinking of somewhere else as home. Begga didn't say goodbye at all. She just left, taking our daughter and 21 years of shared history with her. That night, I sat alone in a house that suddenly felt enormous and empty, trying to figure out how I'd missed all the signs that my family was planning to leave me. The first few weeks after Rebecca and Ashley moved out were the loneliest of my life. I'd wake up every morning expecting to hear Ashley getting ready for school or Rebecca making coffee in the kitchen. Instead, I'd find myself alone in a house that felt like a museum of a life that no longer existed. I called Ashley 3 days after they moved out. She answered on the 4th ring, and I could hear voices in the background. Hi, Dad. Hey, baby girl, how are you settling in? Good. Brad's house is really nice. I have my own bathroom and there's a pool. That sounds great. When can I see you? I don't know. We're still getting unpacked and I start at my new school next week. What about dinner this weekend? We could go to that Italian place you love. I'll have to check with Mom. We might have plans. Check with Mom. Like she needed permission to have dinner with her father. Ashley, you don't need to check with anyone to see me. I'm your dad. I know, Dad. It's just that things are complicated right now. Complicated. Nothing had ever been complicated between Ashley and me before. We'd always been able to talk about anything, work through any problem together. Can you help me understand what's complicated about it? There was a long pause. Dad, I think it's better if we give each other some space for a while. Let everyone adjust to the new situation. I don't need space from you, Ashley. You're my daughter. I know, but I need space from you. I need to focus on Mom right now, make sure she's okay. What about making sure I'm okay? Another pause. Dad, you're an adult. You can take care of yourself. The conversation ended with vague promises to call soon and maybe get together in a few weeks. But I could hear in her voice that Ashley had already moved on, already shifted her loyalty entirely to her mother and this new life they were building together. The divorce proceedings started a month later. Rebecca's lawyer was aggressive, painting me as a controlling husband who had stifled his wife's independence and failed to provide adequately for his family's needs. According to the papers, I was emotionally distant, financially manipulative, and had created an environment where Rebecca felt trapped and unable to pursue her own goals. None of it was true, but it didn't matter. Rebecca was asking for alimony, half the house, and substantial financial support while she transitioned to independence. My lawyer, David Chen, was blunt about my situation. Mr. Bill, your wife has been planning this for a while. She's got documentation going back months about her unhappiness, her attempts to communicate with you, and your alleged failure to respond to her needs. What kind of documentation? A journal detailing conversations you supposedly had where you dismissed her concerns. Testimony from friends about how isolated and unhappy she appeared. Financial records showing that she had no independent assets. That's because we shared everything. We made decisions together. That's not how her lawyer is presenting it. They're saying you control all the finances and gave her no voice in major decisions. It was like Rebecca had spent months building a case against me, creating evidence of problems I didn't know we had, documenting a version of our marriage that bore no resemblance to the life I thought we'd been living. The worst part was Ashley's involvement. She provided a statement to Rebecca's lawyer describing me as emotionally unavailable and overly focused on work. She said I'd made her feel like she had to choose between her parents and that I'd tried to turn her against her mother. Reading Ashley's statement was like being stabbed in the heart. Every accusation was the opposite of what I'd believed about our relationship. According to her, I'd been manipulative, guilt-tripping, and had made her feel responsible for my happiness. She says here that you told her she was your best friend and that made her feel pressure to prioritize your needs over her own emotional development, David read from the statement. I told her she was my best friend because she was, because we had a great relationship. Her statement suggests that she felt burdened by that closeness, like she couldn't have an honest relationship with her mother because you demanded all her attention. None of it made sense. Ashley had never seemed burdened by a relationship. She'd sought out my company, asked for my advice, wanted to spend time with me. How had that turned into emotional manipulation? But looking at the legal documents, the carefully crafted narrative, the coordination between Rebecca and Ashley's statements, I realized this wasn't just a divorce. This was a systematic dismantling of my character designed to justify not just leaving me, but painting me as the villain in their story. The divorce was finalized 8 months later. Rebecca got the house, half my retirement savings, and alimony for 5 years. I kept my truck, my tools, and enough money to start over in a 1-bedroom apartment across town. The day I moved out of the house where I had raised Ashley, she wasn't there to say goodbye. Rebecca said she was at school, but I suspected she was avoiding the emotional difficulty of watching her father leave the family home. I left a letter for Ashley on her old bedroom dresser. It said, "Baby girl, no matter what happens between your mother and me, you will always be my daughter and I will always love you. This house may not be your home anymore, but wherever I am will always be home for you. Call me anytime for any reason. I will always be here for you. Love, Dad." I never found out if she read it. The first year after the divorce was about survival. I moved into a small apartment in East Point, furnished it with basics from thrift stores, and tried to figure out how to live a life that didn't revolve around being a husband and father. I called Ashley every week for the first few months. Sometimes she'd answer, sometimes she wouldn't. When we did talk, the conversations were stilted and brief. She'd tell me about school, about college applications, about her life with Rebecca and Brad, but she never asked about my life, never expressed any interest in seeing me. "How's the new school?" I'd ask. "It's fine. The teachers are good." "Making any friends?" "A few." Everyone's pretty focused on college prep. "Speaking of college, do you want me to help with applications? We could look at schools together, visit some campuses." "Brad's helped me with that stuff, Dad. He knows a lot about college admissions." Brad, the man who'd been in Ashley's life for less than a year, was now helping her make decisions about her future, while I, who'd been dreaming about her college years since she was born, was shut out completely. "I'd still like to be involved, Ashley. I'm your father." "I know, Dad, but Brad's really good at this stuff and Mom wants him to handle it." "Mom wants him to handle it?" Like I needed Rebecca's permission to be involved in my own daughter's education. The conversations became less frequent. Ashley would take longer to return my calls, and when she did, she'd have less time to talk. She was busy with school, with friends, with college preparation, with her new life that apparently had no room for me in it. I tried a different approach. Instead of calling, I started sending letters, real letters, handwritten on paper, telling Ashley about my life, my memories of raising her, my hopes for her future. I thought maybe if she could read my words without having to respond immediately, she might understand how much I loved her. The letters came back unopened, returned to sender, written in Ashley's handwriting. I tried sending emails. They bounced back. Undelivered. Ashley had changed her email address and hadn't given me the new one. I tried reaching out through social media. Ashley had blocked me on every platform. By the end of 2002, I had no way to contact my daughter. She'd systematically cut off every avenue of communication, and when I asked Rebecca if she could help facilitate contact, she said Ashley was an adult who could make her own decisions about who she wanted in her life. "Maybe if you'd been a better father, she'd want a relationship with you," Rebecca said during one of our brief phone conversations about some remaining divorce paperwork. A better father. After 18 years of coaching Little League, attending every school play, helping with homework, teaching her about the world, being there for every scraped knee and broken heart, I apparently hadn't been good enough. I hired a lawyer to explore my rights, Could a parent be completely cut off from an adult child? Was there any legal recourse for maintaining contact? Mr. Bill, the lawyer explained, once your daughter turned 18, she became legally entitled to choose who she has contact with. Unless there's evidence of coercion or manipulation, the courts won't intervene in family disputes. What about the fact that her mother has been systematically turning her against me? That would be very difficult to prove, and even if you could prove it, your daughter is now an adult making her own choices. So that was it. 18 years of being a father erased by the legal system that said blood ties meant nothing if the child decided that it didn't want them. I considered hiring a private investigator to find out where Ashley was going to college, what she was studying, how her life was unfolding. But something about that felt wrong, like I'd be violating the boundaries she'd set, even if I didn't understand or agree with them. Instead, I decided to focus on rebuilding my own life. If Ashley ever wanted to find me, I'd make sure I was someone worth finding. I threw myself into work, taking on bigger electrical projects, building a reputation as someone who can handle complex industrial jobs. The physical demands of the work helped exhaust me enough that I could sleep at night without lying awake thinking about what I'd lost. I started volunteering with Habitat for Humanity, using my electrical skills to help build homes for families who needed them. There was something healing about creating something good for people who appreciated the effort, who understood the value of what was being given to them. Mr. Bill, said Maria, a single mother whose house I was helping wire, you've given my children a future. They're going to grow up in a real home because of people like you. That meant something. It didn't fill the hole that Ashley had left in my life, but it reminded me that I had value, that my skills and my heart could still make a difference in the world. I also started going to therapy. Dr. Patricia Williams was a Black woman in her 50s who specialized in helping people deal with family estrangement. Mr. Bill, she said during one of our early sessions, you're grieving the loss of a relationship with someone who's still alive. That's one of the most complicated forms of grief there is. How do you grieve someone who chose to leave? You grieve the relationship you thought you had. You grieve the future you planned together. You grieve the person you thought you were to them. That was exactly right. I wasn't just missing Ashley. I was questioning everything I'd believed about myself as a father. If she could cut me out so completely, so easily, what did that say about the relationship I thought we'd had? The hardest part, Dr. Williams explained, is that you can't get closure from someone who won't engage with you. You have to find a way to make peace with the situation without their participation. Over the next few years, I worked on accepting that Ashley had made her choice. I couldn't force her to love me, couldn't make her see me the way I wanted to be seen, couldn't undo whatever poison Rebecca had fed her about who I was and what I'd done wrong. But I could control who I became next. I could build a life that honored the values my father had taught me, regardless of whether anyone was watching or appreciating the effort. I started dating again after 3 years. Nothing serious at first, just coffee dates and casual dinners with women I met through work or volunteer activities. It felt strange at first, introducing myself as just Henry instead of Ashley's dad or Rebecca's husband. But slowly, I remembered who I was outside of those roles. I was a skilled tradesman who took pride in his work. I was a volunteer who contributed to his community. I was a man who treated people with respect and kindness. Those things were true whether Ashley acknowledged them or not. I met Catherine Jones at a church barbecue in 2005. She was a 52-year-old widow whose husband had died in Iraq, leaving her to raise 2 teenage sons on her own. She was strong, independent, and had no illusions about love solving all of life's problems. I'm not looking for someone to complete me, she told me on our third date. I'm looking for someone to complement me. I like that. Catherine wasn't trying to fill a void or escape from something. She was looking for partnership with someone who had his own complete life to offer. We dated for 2 years before moving in together and another year before getting married. It was a different kind of love than what I had had with Rebecca, more mature, more grounded, based on genuine compatibility rather than youthful passion and dreams. Catherine's sons, David and Michael, were 16 and 18 when we got married. They were polite to me, respectful, but appropriately wary of the new man in their mother's life. I didn't try to be their father. They had a father whose memory they honored. Instead, I tried to be a good stepfather, someone who supported their goals and added value to their family. "Mr. Henry," David said to me after I'd helped him with a science project, "thank you for being good to my mom. Thank you for accepting me into your family. You make her happy, that's all we want." It was a simple exchange, but it meant the world to me. Here were young men who understood that family was about choice and effort, not just biology. They didn't owe me love, but they offered respect and appreciation for the role I play in their lives. Catherine's boys graduated, went to college, started careers, got married, and had children of their own. They invited me to their graduations, their weddings, their children's baptisms. I wasn't their father, but I was family. I was someone who mattered in their lives. Meanwhile, Ashley remained a ghost. I'd catch glimpses of her life through mutual acquaintances. She graduated from the University of Georgia with a degree in marketing. She'd gotten a job with a consulting firm in Charleston. She'd bought her own condo. She was living a successful, independent life. But she never reached out, never sent a card on my birthday or Father's Day, never tried to repair the relationship that had been broken when she was 18 and angry and convinced that her mother's happiness was more important than her father's heartbreak. I learned to live with the loss. It never stopped hurting, but the pain became manageable, like a chronic injury that you learn to work around. I built a good life with Catherine, maintained close relationships with her sons and their families, and found purpose in my work and volunteer activities. But I never stopped hoping that someday Ashley would realize that cutting me out of her life had been a mistake, that someday she'd want to rebuild what we'd lost. I just never imagined that when she finally reached out, it would be because she needed money. The 14 years between Ashley walking out of my life and her text message asking for wedding money taught me more about love, loss, and human nature than I'd learned in the previous 59 years combined. The first lesson was about the difference between love and need. For most of Ashley's childhood, I confused her need for me with love for me. She needed my protection, my guidance, my financial support, my presence at school events and family dinners. I'd interpreted that need as love, and I'd felt valuable because I was needed. But when Ashley became an adult and no longer needed those things from me, I discovered that the love I thought was there had been largely one-sided. She'd appreciated what I provided, but she hadn't developed the deep emotional attachment to me that I'd felt for her. Dr. Williams helped me understand this distinction during one of our sessions. Many parents make the mistake of thinking that being needed is the same as being loved, she explained. Children need their parents for survival and development, but love is something different. Love is choosing to maintain a connection even when you don't need someone anymore. So Ashley never really loved me? I think Ashley loved you the way children love parents who take care of them. But that's different from the way adults love each other, which requires choice and effort and sacrifice. The second lesson was about the power of narrative. Rebecca had spent years crafting a story about our marriage and my role as a father that painted me as the problem. She'd been subtle about it, probably not even conscious of what she was doing at first, but over time, she'd created a version of reality where I was controlling, emotionally unavailable, and had failed to meet her needs. Ashley had absorbed this narrative during her formative years. By the time she was 18, she genuinely believed that I was the obstacle to her mother's happiness, and that supporting Rebecca meant rejecting me. The story people tell themselves about their lives becomes their reality, Dr. Williams explained. Your daughter has been living in a story where you're the villain. That's not necessarily based on facts, but it's become true for her. How do you fight a story? You can't. You can only live your own story and hope that someday the truth becomes more compelling than the fiction. The third lesson was about the limits of forgiveness. I'd been raised to believe that forgiveness was always the right choice, that holding on to anger or resentment would only hurt me. But I learned that there's a difference between forgiveness and acceptance of ongoing harm. I could forgive Ashley for cutting me out of her life. I could understand that she'd been young and influenced by her mother's narrative. I could accept that she'd made the best decision she knew how to make with the information she had. But I didn't have to accept being treated as nothing more than a financial resource. I didn't have to pretend that 14 years of silence could be erased by a single text message asking for money. The fourth lesson was about building identity outside of family roles. For 18 years, I defined myself primarily as Ashley's father. When that was taken away, I had to figure out who Henry Bill was when he wasn't anybody's dad. That process was painful, but ultimately liberating. I discovered that I was a skilled craftsman, a generous volunteer, a loyal friend, a faithful husband to Catherine. These identities belonged to me regardless of whether Ashley acknowledged them. You can't base your self-worth on how other people treat you. Catherine told me one evening as we sat on our porch watching the sunset, you have to know who you are independent of their opinions. The fifth lesson was about the difference between family and relationship. Family is biology and legal connections. Relationship is ongoing emotional investment and mutual care. I was Ashley's family by virtue of raising her for 18 years. But we didn't have a relationship anymore because she'd chosen to end the emotional investment and mutual care that relationships require. Meanwhile, I developed real relationships with Catherine's sons built on choice and effort rather than obligation. They weren't my family in the traditional sense, but our relationships were deeper and more meaningful than the family connection I'd had with Ashley. The sixth lesson was about legacy. I'd always assumed that my legacy would be Ashley, that she would carry forward the values I taught her and maybe pass them on to her own children someday. When that hope died, I had to find other ways to leave a positive mark on the world. The houses I'd helped build, the young electricians I'd mentored, the families I'd served through my volunteer work, these became my legacy instead. Legacy isn't about blood relations, my sponsor at Habitat for Humanity told me. Legacy is about the good you do in the world, regardless of who remembers your name. The seventh lesson was about the nature of closure. I'd spent years hoping for a conversation with Ashley where we could clear the air, where I could explain my side of the story, where she could understand how much I'd loved her. But I learned that closure doesn't require the other person's participation. I could make peace with our estrangement, could find meaning in the relationship we'd had, could move forward with my life without needing her validation or understanding. The eighth lesson was about the power of choice in relationships. Every healthy relationship is sustained by ongoing choice. People choose to stay connected, choose to work through problems, choose to prioritize the relationship even when it's difficult. Ashley had chosen to prioritize her mother's happiness over our relationship. That was her right as an adult, but it was also a choice that had consequences. She couldn't have the benefits of a father-daughter relationship without making the ongoing choices that sustain it. The ninth lesson was about the importance of boundaries. I'd spent years being available to Ashley whenever she might decide to reach out, keeping my phone on, checking my email, hoping for any sign that she wanted to reconnect. But maintaining hope for a relationship with someone who'd shown no interest in having one was unhealthy. I had to set boundaries around how much emotional energy I was willing to invest in someone who made it clear I wasn't welcome in their life. The 10th lesson was about the difference between conditional and unconditional love. I'd always thought I loved Ashley unconditionally, and in some ways I did. I would always wish her well, always hope for her happiness, always be grateful for the years we'd had together. But I also learned that love without respect isn't healthy. If Ashley only valued me for what I could provide financially, then our connection wasn't really love at all. It was a transaction. These lessons prepared me for the moment when Ashley's text message arrived. They helped me understand that her request for wedding money wasn't really about rebuilding our relationship. It was about accessing the financial resource she'd rejected when she decided she didn't need a father anymore. The wedding invitation arrived 2 weeks after Ashley's initial text message. It was elegant, expensive looking, the kind of invitation that suggested a celebration costing tens of thousands of dollars. My name was listed as Mr. Henry Bill under the father of the bride section, as if 14 years of silence could be erased by including me in the wedding party list. Oh, I stood in my kitchen holding that invitation, remembering another invitation from 24 years earlier, Ashley's high school graduation. I'd received that one by accident, forwarded by a neighbor who'd gotten our mail by mistake. I'd driven to the ceremony and sat in the back, watching my daughter graduate without acknowledging my presence. This felt the same. I was being invited to participate in Ashley's life, but only in the role of financial contributor. Not as her father, not as someone she'd missed, not as someone whose presence would add joy to her special day. Just as a checkbook with legs, Catherine found me there staring at the invitation. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I'm thinking about the difference between being wanted and being needed." "And which one is this?" "Definitely needed. The question is whether I'm okay with that." We talked about it for hours that night. Catherine, as always, was wise and practical. "You don't owe Ashley anything," she said. "She made her choice 14 years ago. If she wants to change that choice now, she needs to do more than just ask for money. But she's still my daughter. Biology doesn't create obligation, Henry. Relationship creates obligation. And you two don't have a relationship anymore." Catherine was right, but it was still difficult. Ashley was getting married, starting a new chapter of her life, and some part of me wanted to be included in that joy, even if it cost me financially. I decided to respond to her text message, but not in the way she expected. "Ashley," I wrote, "I receive your invitation and your request for money. I'm happy to hear you're getting married. I'd love to meet your fiance and hear about your plans for the future. If you'd like to rebuild our relationship, I'm open to that conversation, but I won't be providing financial support without rebuilding the personal connection first. If you're interested in having coffee and talking, let me know. If not, I understand and wish you well. Love, Dad." Her response came 3 hours later. "I don't have time for coffee and conversations, Dad. This is about fairness. You owe Mom and me for all the child support you never paid. $50,000, 0 cents is actually less than what you would have paid if you'd been doing the right thing all along. Child support I never paid for a daughter I'd raised in my own home, whose every need I'd met, whose every expense I'd covered." The revisionist history was breathtaking. I showed the message to Catherine. "She's been coached," Catherine said immediately. "That language about fairness and what you owe sounds like her mother talking." Should I try to explain that I did support her, that I raised her in my house until she was 18? "Henry, you can't reason with someone who's rewritten history to justify what they want. She's not interested in the truth. She's interested in your money." I wrote back one final message. "Ashley, I supported you financially and emotionally for 18 years. I don't owe you anything beyond the love I'll always have for you. I hope your wedding is beautiful and your marriage is happy, but I won't be contributing money to either." She didn't respond to that message, but 2 days later, I received a call from Rebecca. "Henry, you're being unreasonable. Ashley's your daughter. You should want to help with her wedding." "I do want to help. I offered to rebuild our relationship. She's not interested in that." "She doesn't owe you a relationship just because you want one. And I don't owe her money just because she wants it. You owe us for 18 years of child support." "Rebecca, I raised Ashley in my house. I fed her, clothed her, paid for her school activities, saved money for her college. What child support are you talking about? After the divorce, you should have been paying support. She was 18 when we divorced, and she chose to live with you. She was still in high school. for 6 months. And during those 6 months, I tried to maintain contact with her. She was the one who cut me off because you were trying to manipulate her into choosing sides. The gaslighting was impressive. Rebecca had somehow convinced herself that my attempts to maintain a relationship with my daughter after the divorce were manipulation, while her campaign to turn Ashley against me had been protection. Rebecca, I'm not going to relitigate the past with you. Ashley is an adult who made her choices. I respect those choices, but I'm not going to fund a wedding for someone who's made it clear I'm not welcome in her life. You're going to regret this, Henry. I'm going to regret a lot of things, but standing up for myself isn't one of them. The wedding happened 3 months later. I didn't attend, wasn't really invited in any meaningful way. I heard through mutual acquaintances that it was a beautiful ceremony, expensive and elegant, funded by Ashley's mother and her husband, Brad. Part of me was sad to miss it. Despite everything, I would have liked to see Ashley in her wedding dress, would have liked to meet the man she'd chosen to spend her life with, would have liked to participate in her joy. But I knew that my presence would have been hollow, that I would have been there as a prop in someone else's story rather than as Ashley's father, and I'd learned too much about my own worth to accept that role anymore. 6 months after the wedding, I received a birth announcement. Ashley had had a baby, a little girl named Emma. She was beautiful in the photo, with Ashley's green eyes and what looked like her grandmother Rebecca's smile. I was a grandfather. Somewhere in Charleston, there was a little girl who carried my DNA, who might someday want to know about the man who loved her mother before she was born. I sent a small gift, a wooden toy I'd made in my workshop, along with a note congratulating Ashley and telling her I was happy for her growing family. I didn't ask to meet Emma, didn't push for grandparent rights, didn't try to force my way into their lives. But I did start a savings account in Emma's name. Every month, I put money aside for her future, for college or a house or whatever dreams she might have someday. Not because Ashley had asked me to, not because I owed anyone anything, but because that's what love looks like. Real love doesn't demand anything in return. Real love doesn't keep score. Real love gives because giving is what love does, not because the recipient has earned it or deserves it. If Emma ever wants to know her grandfather, I'll be here. If she doesn't, that's okay too. But either way, she'll have resources available to her because someone loved her before she was born. Someone who understood that family isn't just about who shows up at your wedding. These days, I spend my time focused on the relationships that give as much as they take. Catherine and I are talking about retirement, about traveling, about the grandchildren we do get to see regularly. Her sons, David and Michael, include me in their lives, not because they have to. Mr. Henry, David's daughter, Sarah, said to me last week as I was teaching her how to wire a dollhouse, "Are you my real grandfather?" "I'm your step-grandfather," I told her, "but I love you like a real grandfather." "What's the difference?" "Real grandfathers are related to you by blood. Step-grandfathers are related to you by choice. Sometimes choice is stronger than blood." She thought about that for a minute. "I choose you too, Mr. Henry." That's what family really means. It's not about biology or obligation or guilt or debt. It's about choosing each other over and over again because the relationship adds value to both people's lives. Ashley chose Rebecca's version of family, where love is conditional and relationships are transactions. That's her right, and I hope it makes her happy. I chose a different version, where love is freely given and relationships are built on mutual respect and genuine affection. It's taken me 73 years to understand the difference, but I finally do. If this story hit home, share your own experience in the comments. Drop a line about a time when you had to choose between your dignity and someone else's demands. Don't forget to subscribe and tell a brother who needs to hear that your worth isn't determined by how other people treat you. This is His Stories, where men rise above together. And remember, fellas, you can't force someone to love you, but you can control how much of yourself you're willing to give to people who don't value what you offer. Your love is a gift, not a debt. Give it wisely. At 73, I wake up every morning surrounded by people who chose to be in my life and who I chose to love in return. That's worth more than all the weddings and babies and family obligations in the world. The family you build is just as real as the family you're born into. Sometimes it's more real because it's based on truth instead of biology, choice instead of obligation, love instead of guilt. Ashley may never understand what she gave up when she chose money over relationship, but I understand what I gained when I chose dignity over desperation. And that's a lesson worth learning no matter how long it takes.